Okay, hey guys. I am at it again with another movie review. This time I am reviewing Space Jam: A New Legacy, which was directed by Malcolm D. Lee and was released by Warner Brothers. It is the sequel to the 1996 film Space Jam, and that movie starred Michael Jordan and the Looney Tunes. And this movie stars LeBron James and also the Looney Tunes. It also, yeah. So basically, let's just get down right to it. I'm gonna do my best to try and not compare uh this sequel to the original because I'm sure that it's very, very easy to do that. However, I feel like that would kind of be a bit unfair, and I'll go into why. But basically, grade wise, just to get this out of the way, I would say I'll probably give it a C minus. Honestly, I could actually go a lot lower than that. But like I said, this movie had its moments. So let's start with the pros of this movie. So one of the better things about this movie was the CGI, special effects, and just the overall aesthetic of the movie. Um, I felt as though you could definitely see the money. You could definitely see all the money that they invested into making this film. There was a lot of CG, there was a lot of 2D as well as 3D animation. So it felt, it definitely felt like this world was fully realized. It felt like, just everything popped on the screen. It was just a lot of bright colors, a lot of flashing lights and shiny lights and all that stuff. So, yeah, like, production wise, I mean, the production value was definitely there. It was definitely there. But I will also say this. Uh, One of the other pros for this film includes, I would actually say, LeBron James. LeBron James actually brought his A game, I think, to this film. I thought he did a good job. It wasn't like a masterful performance. It wasn't like the greatest performance ever made, put on cinema. But for what it was, for the kind of movie that it is, I mean, it wasn't bad, you know. Um, and I guess okay, so I guess here's my first comparison of the night. But going back to the original, Michael Jordan wasn't exactly great in that movie either, but he held his own, and yeah, I thought he was serviceable. He did a fine job in the original, and in this one, LeBron James also holds his own. So yeah. So and as well as the other pro, I guess like was Zendaya as Lola Bunny. I honestly felt, sort of going a little bit off tangent here, but not really. I've kind of felt as though the Looney Tunes were a bit kind of sidelined in this film. There was so much going on in this film. There were so many characters, so many things happening, and the craziness level gets ramped up to like 100 at times. It's pretty insane. I mean, like I said, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of movement, lights and effects and all that stuff on screen. So I honestly just felt like the Looney Tunes kind of got the short end of the stick. But on the positive side, Zendaya was a very good fit for Lola Bunny. When I first heard that they were going to recast Lola Bunny with Zendaya for this movie, I was a little bit skeptical because honestly, I'm not the biggest Zendaya fan. I think honestly, when it comes to Spider-Man movies, she's kind of miscast for those. But for this one, I thought she did a good job as the voice, and yeah, you know. So let's see. There are a few others. Don Cheadle was okay. He was definitely hamming it up at times, but I felt Don Cheadle is always a great actor. Usually brings it in every single movie that he does, and this movie was no exception. So yeah. So those are all the pros. Oh wait, also sorry. So last pro for this movie, the last good thing, last pro, was that the humor was definitely there. The humor was funny, and even after all these years of watching Looney Tune cartoons and movies and stuff, and yeah, it still cracks me up even to this day. Even as a 30-something-year-old man, it still gets to me. So that was definitely left intact. Now, as far as the negatives, as far as the cons go for this movie, there are quite a few, so you might want to sit back. But basically, I felt as though this movie was honestly completely unnecessary. When it comes down to it, the original was definitely a product of its time. Like I said, it came out in like the late '90s and mid '90s or so. Michael Jordan Mania Fever was just like at like all-time high at its peak, and the Looney Tunes were also. I'm assuming that they were really popular back then. I don't really remember because I was like 9 or 10. But yeah, so basically put those two combined, and plus Bill Murray, as well as like whatever else is popular at that time, and then that's sort of what made Space Jam a classic. Space Jam is a classic for a few reasons. Number one, because I grew up with it, so it's a movie from my childhood. But number two, it's just honestly, it's just a fun movie. And like I said, it works in the context of the '90s, of the time period that it was released in, that it was shot in. Like I said, Space Jam is not. Space Jam 1 is not a masterpiece. What I mean. It's definitely not going to win necessarily any Oscars, but it definitely has a lot of heart and humor, and it's also cheesy, but it's sort of self-aware, so it doesn't really go too overboard. So it's just the right amount. But this movie, Space Jam: A New Legacy, it definitely goes overboard. Way, way, way overboard at times, and it's not even really entertaining. It's just kind of like, why? It's kind of like a sugar rush, on steroids. Basically, there's just, like I said, there's so much going on in this movie, especially during the third act in the basketball game, where things get really crazy. I mean, it's just constantly, every shot is like trying to top the last one in terms of craziness. But again, I mean, it's a Space Jam movie, so I guess you kind of expect that. But however, though, I felt as though it just really didn't live up to, I guess, the charm and the appeal of the original. So that's a negative. I also felt as though, like I said before, the Looney Tunes were kind of sidelined, and this is a Space Jam movie, so you go to a Space Jam movie for the Looney Tunes and for Michael Jordan or LeBron James, or whichever basketball player is starring in it. But it's just, yeah, I felt as though the Looney Tunes were even more sidelined in this one. Um, the guy who did the voice for Bugs Bunny in this one, I can tell is different. I don't know his name, but I do know how for a fact, top of my head, because I read somewhere that it is a different actor than the one who was the voice actor for Bugs in the original one. So it's not the same guy, and it's definitely very noticeable. I've heard a lot of other reviewers state that he was not their favorite part of the movie, that he was kind of miscast, and that it kind of took them out of it a little bit. Yeah, I honestly would have to agree with that. I would have to agree with that. Not a terrible job by any means, but it's just kind of, I mean, I don't know. It just felt a little bit off at times. That's all. Um, Also, the movie was just like strangely really kind of long. It was unnecessarily long. I looked at the runtime, and I believe it's like an hour and 40 minutes, hour 50 minutes. That's almost 2 hours. Whereas the original is less than an hour and a half. So again, I'm sorry. That's like the third or fourth comparison of the night, but I guess yeah, I guess it's inevitable. So yeah, so the runtime was a little bit long. The second act drags a lot. The second act, spoiler alert, the second act is mostly comprised of the Looney Tunes and LeBron James, and they're basically all drawn as like 2D cartoons, including LeBron. LeBron is also a cartoon for most of this movie. So yeah, he's pretty much a cartoon animated form for the entire second act, which is the longest act of the film. And unfortunately, like I said, it drags. It's not especially funny. It's not especially inventive or cute or anything like that. It's just kind of stale. It's kind of boring. You kind of want to get to the third act, which is the big basketball game. And that was also sort of a con for me, because I felt as though that also dragged on. There was too much CG. There was just too much craziness. There wasn't really, the sort of underdog. I mean, there is definitely that underdog kind of feel to it. Where you feel like, LeBron James and the Looney Tunes are kind of, they're portrayed as underdogs for the most part, especially in the third act. But as we all know, that doesn't last. But just in general, I wish they would have shortened the game, or at least made it more sort of, a traditional kind of game. But that's just me. So, and then also another con that I had was that it's just, there's not character development. I know that sounds kind of oxymoron to say, because it's a freaking Space Jam movie, but at the same time, so the heart of this movie is the relationship between LeBron James and his son, his fictional son, in this movie. And it's just, it kind of felt a little bit rushed. I mean, this movie does have heart. It's just, make no mistake about it. There is heart, there is emotion to it. But in general, if they had just cut a lot of the second act out and focused instead on the relationship between LeBron James and his son in this movie, then it would have been a little bit tighter, would have been a little bit more concise, more well developed, all that stuff. Although the actor who played his son was all right, he was fine. And then, can I say what else? But yeah, So I guess that kind of sums about it. I mean, I don't want to make this review too long, but I do want to say that, in general, yes, okay, so going into this movie, I had very low expectations. Very low expectations. Number one, the original is still a classic and will always be a classic. It'll always be a classic no matter how old I get. It will always be a classic. Number two, because of that, and because of the fact that the original is basically just Michael Jordan propaganda, it's basically a staple of its time. There was almost no need to make a sequel or a reboot or whatever. Um, and you can tell, obviously, the only reason they did it, Warner Brothers greenlit it, was to make money. Um, so that's pretty much it. But like I said, yeah, a lot of the appeal and charm of the original is not in this one.